The Midwest has some of the most diverse weather conditions in the entire United States, from blistering heat to freezing cold and everything in between. Even so, there is one thing that ties together the weather here in mid-Michigan and down here at Cape Canaveral in Florida. They're weather satellites.
For the GOES-R series, our standard constellation right now is 2 satellites. We've got one over the East Coast, one over the West Coast, and then we always have an on-orbit spare so that we can get something in place when needed.
NOAA, NASA, and so many other entities have been trying to get this satellite into space. And once it's up there, it's going to be keeping an eye on the skies over Florida, Michigan, North America, South America, and even over the Atlantic Ocean. Let's take a closer look at the GOES-U satellite, because in reality, this is the size of a school bus and it weighs over 6,000 pounds. So we have to shrink it down just a little bit to fit it in the studio. Already you can see all the instruments on it. One of the main ones is the Advanced Baseline Imager. Now this is an instrument that can sense things on Earth, and it can send back data about sea surface temperatures, aerosol content. You name it, it has a lot of different capabilities. Then you also have the geostationary lightning mapper. This can track individual bolts of lightning and tell you where it's more likely to start wildfires so you can prevent them from spreading. Then you go from Earth up towards the sun, and we have 3 different instruments studying the sun. The one that's unique to GOES-U, though, is the compact coronagraph. This studies the sun's corona and tells us when a coronal mass ejection is headed towards Earth. That's important because our astronauts need to know, people running satellites need to know, and we should know because it can cause the northern lights. Then you also have things like the magnetometer. NOAA has space weather operations, so they need to know what's happening with the magnetic field around Earth. And there's so many other instruments packed into this thing. We could talk about it forever, but all you need to know is that the more tools that meteorologists have, the better it is for everyone. The GOES-U satellite hitched a ride on a Falcon Heavy rocket here at Kennedy Space Center. And now that you're watching this piece, it's actually over your head right now. GOES-U successfully launched into space, reached orbit, and has recently begun sending back incredible imagery of Earth. This includes high-resolution, rapid refresh images of Hurricane Milton, a solar eclipse over the Pacific Ocean, and wildfires in the Rocky Mountains. These images are preliminary, with GOES-19 expected to become operational in April of 2025. Whether in Michigan, Florida, North America, South America, the Atlantic or Pacific Oceans, we're still monitoring the weather overhead using these GOES satellites, and in the decades to come, it's only going to get better. Reporting from Cape Canaveral, Florida, I'm meteorologist Katie Nickolaou.
Well, we are deep into summer storm season here in mid-Michigan. For this week's Weather Wednesday, meteorologist Katie Nickolaou is here to tell us where those storms come from with some unique visual aids.
It's been a stormy start to summer in mid-Michigan with flooding, damaging winds, hail, and even tornadoes across our area. But have you ever stopped to think about why those storms even form in the first place and how? It actually is tied directly to the sun. The sun releases radiation that travels through space and gets to Earth. Once it travels through the atmosphere, it eventually ends up hitting the ground, where it's absorbed, and as a result, the ground releases heat, creating what's known as a hot air parcel. Think of it kind of like a bubble of hot air. And that bubble is forced to rise when we get, say, a cold front to move in. That colder air goes underneath the bubble, pushes it up in the atmosphere, and when it goes up, it starts to cool. As the air cools, so does the water within that air parcel, and so we start to form clouds, rain, and storms. It's an interesting process, and it's actually mirrored by hot air balloons. They fly on a very similar process with hot air rising. But we could talk about it in the studio. I still say we talk about it outside. Let's take a look. This past week, I went to the Battle Creek Field of Flight Air Show and Balloon Festival in search of a pilot who could help me explain this science, and I found one. His name's Pat Rolfe, and he's been a hot air balloon pilot for over 20 years in the skies across mid-Michigan. In order to get the balloons in the air, first you have to fill them with air. Next, you fill it with fire. That's what heats up the balloon to the point that the air can lift you off the ground. Once you're up in the air, it becomes a battle between hot and cold air to try to stay afloat.
The balloon is always cooling, so I have to burn every so often to maintain level flight. If I want to drop, I let it cool and drop. If I want to go up, I heat it more and go up.
So once you're in the air, you have to make sure that you keep that hot air going. Otherwise, your air parcel starts to sink. This process of heating and cooling is continued until eventually you want to end your flight and you head down towards the ground. Reporting up in the sky across mid-Michigan, I'm meteorologist Katie Nickolaou. Including this report of a 4-inch hailstone. And if you're wondering what that looks like, I have a picture for you because I'm the one who found that stone. It was in a cornfield, fell with the storm that was associated with a tornado emergency. The first one ever for the state of Michigan. That's a strong storm. The larger the hail, generally the stronger the storm is, and it dropped plenty of hail. It looked really spiky, very strange shapes to it, and even though the hail threat started to diminish as it moved into our area, it still melted and created a lot of rain. Well, when you look outside right now, you might be seeing some clouds and some sunshine and perfect pool weather. Yes, WLNS does have a swimming pool, and you know what? You'd be hard-pressed to pull me out of this thing right now. It's comfortable, and it's great because we don't have any storms just yet. Let's take a look at what we're seeing over on the radar, because we're going to be seeing the chance for some storms. They just aren't here yet. That rain had been moving across Lake Michigan, but if I zoom things out, you'll see it's kind of fizzled, actually. It ran into a little bit of dry air, so good news for us. We're able to buy some dry time before more storms try to redevelop. Temperature-wise, it's getting toasty. We're still in the 70s technically, but there's warmer air just to our south, the 80s, and it's going to keep warming up through the afternoon. These temperatures are not done with us just yet. We have had some heat this summer, and it's been off and on. Some cooler pockets and then the warmer ones. We're in the warmer one right now. This is pool weather. Highs will be in the upper 80s today, and that's going to be with plenty of humidity. We do have humidity and heat combining, and that makes it feel like it's in the upper 90s. When I say pool weather, I mean it. It's going to be very comfortable in the water, not so much outside of it, especially when the storms get going. Let's look at the precision cast because we do have storms on the way. Going forward in time, when we look around 4 or 5 o'clock, we have some discrete cells popping up. That's when they're by themselves, but they're going to quickly line out, creating that line that gusts forward and creating a chance for severe weather too. Now, 7 o'clock, we got a lot of football games kicking off, high school and college. Spartans, let's go. But the radar's also going to be green in spirit, so it might actually delay some games, just depending on if there's lightning nearby. That continues to move towards the east, so we will dry up after sunset. It just might cause some problems for tailgaters. And by problems, I mean severe weather. The Storm Prediction Center does still have us under that marginal risk for severe storms today, and it's mainly going to be because of that chance for damaging wind gusts. You also could have some hail. And as you go towards the east side of the state, we actually have a slight risk. That's a 2 out of 5 on the scale, which is all about confidence. Now, when it comes to what we could see, I mentioned that wind could have gusts up towards 60 miles an hour, but also around quarter-sized hail, which in a pool, quarters, they don't do much. I mean, they might be a nuisance, but you have to remember these storms are lines of storms. They can produce millions of hailstones, and those can cause a lot of problems. Not to mention, these are quarters, the general size of the hail. You could also end up getting some much larger ones, and that really causes a mess. So if you do have any severe storms in your area, make sure that you head inside until they go away. As for the tornado threat, it's still a really limited threat. That's more towards the thumb area of Michigan, so not as much of a concern. Football forecast, the one everyone's concerned about. That lightning is just for the first quarter. It should start to clear up as we go later on. And as always, the forecast gets better after the football games are done. The forecast cleans up, it dries up, and those temperatures will be in the 70s just in time for Labor Day. Jorma, back to you.
We're still seeing frequent lightning and thunder, mostly up towards Lansing and St. John's, and another pocket going all the way from Marshall back towards Jackson. And these are likely to continue for much of this morning. Looks like I just lost my monitor, so I can't actually see what's going on with the graphics. Now they just came back on. You might have even heard the thunder. I have a feeling that's to blame. Looking at what we have across the Midwest, this is a little tiny section of it. When you get to the west, it's clear and it's warmer. Temperatures are going to be warming up quite a bit behind this. This is a warm front, so we're at 66 degrees in Lansing, 78 in Chicago. It is going to be a hot day today, 94 degrees, actual air temperature, mostly sunny too, so the sunshine's going to make it feel even warmer. And yes, there's still a chance for some isolated storms. Looking at our weather alerts, no surprise here, we have heat advisories across the area. Oh, I just lost our graphic again. This lightning is causing problems, I'll tell you that. But you know what? All you need to know is that we're going to have that lightning chance in the morning, maybe even popping up in the afternoon, but this heat lasts the entire day. This morning, Emmy's joining me from the Capitol Area Humane Society, and we're talking about the sunset we had last night. You're beautiful, and so was the sunset, although it had a little bit more color to it. Lots of deep oranges and yellows, and that's actually because of clouds from Hurricane Helene instead of wildfire smoke. We don't have any wildfire smoke in our area. It was due to the low sun angle near sunset and those high up clouds that we saw that pop of color. Kind of like your coat, very beautiful.